Hello, welcome to our video on succession in family businesses. My name's Chris Theophanous and this is...
I'm Ian Winsley.
We're a couple of pals that have met because our kids go to school and found that we have a very similar family business, both inherited family businesses, small family businesses, and we thought it would be nice to have a YouTube video, a series of YouTube videos on how we've grown those businesses and developed them, because I think we've done very well. I think it's fair to say, and we've had our challenges along the way. I would say
very similar challenges.
Very similar challenges. So how did you? Let's start off with sort of a little bit about how we first started.
Sure.
How did you first start, and where did you take the business from to? Ian?
Sure. Okay. So my father started the business in '98. It's called Selby Contract Flooring. It's a flooring contractor based in London. I joined in 2007, so we were just hitting the start of the recession. I was working in property, saw the opportunity in my dad's company, and joined him in April 2007. So from there, sort of a big oversight, sort of overview of the whole thing, up to today. I took it from a $500,000 turnover business. 2019, we're at 3.5 million. At about a net profit of 10 to 15%, just finalising the final figures.
Very nice.
So yeah, it's come a long way.
Yeah.
That's just the overview of the figures, but the actual company is totally transformed as well, which we'll talk more about. And yourself?
Very similar. My story started slightly different with my father because he started much earlier. So he had a thriving, very profitable business, but it was very stagnant. Again, very similar turnover, about 400,000, now up to 2.5 million. That's probably, though, over the last 6 years is really when I sort of started. So a very similar sort of timescale as well. Yeah. It's very interesting that maybe it's that time of life as well that you learn a few things in your early part of your life, and you start putting that into practice later on.
The rocket starts.
Absolutely. So, how did you get into the business originally? What was it that sort of made you go from your property side interests into flooring?
Yeah, obviously flooring isn't the most glamorous trade out there, but it was two things really. It was the market. I was working for a property development company. The big landlords all knew what was coming. We were starting to move out. So that was playing on my mind a bit. And every summer holidays, my gap year, I've always worked with my dad. So I knew the business well. I knew its potential. I think I always struggled being an employee. Once you've got that grained into you. I mean, I even see my daughter now. She's 8, I can't see her ever being an employee for long.
It's nice to have decisions in your own control, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's actually nice having everything being your fault. Yeah. I quite like that.
Yeah.
Even if it's someone else's decision, costs you money, ultimately comes back to you, and I like having that responsibility.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what about you? How did you get into the...
My father had a curtain manufacturing company called Y Contract Finishers. We later in 1998 bought a company called Bradbury, which does the hardware and curtain track side.
Yeah.
I was always involved, like you, but sweeping floors, doing that. My dad takes great pride in telling everyone, he started on the factory floors, sweeping floors and what have you. Not sure how relevant that is to business development, but it certainly breeds humility, I think, which is very important. When you're coming in, which most people see as a silver spoon, to start at the bottom is good, and it gives you a good founding and knowledge as well, in the industry. But really, when I started to get actually in the business is actually when my father had a heart bypass. He needed someone to actually sign checks, and I was the person he trusted to do that. And I was probably about 17 or 18, and that was the start of it really. And that was when I started going each day, signing checks, paying attention to how the business was run, and trying to keep it moving without the managing director.
Yeah, that's just brought on quite an interesting question I'd like to ask is, I found coming in 2007, I mean, it was quite a small team, small installation team, office, 2 or 3 employees. How did you find, what was their reaction to you coming into the company?
It was very accepting, actually, in many ways. I think some people saw it. My father didn't have a management team; it was him alone. So it'd be him, and he had a production manager who would cut the fabrics for the curtains, etc., and do that sort of side of things. But there was no one really to run the business. So having a second generation come in is actually very stabilising for the employees, because they know that's the future. I'm going to have a job.
Okay.
There's no fear of what's going to happen next. It's very clear to them.
Yeah.
So clarity can be it. I'm sure some of them thought that I had a silver spoon in my mouth and that, oh, look at him, isn't he lucky?
Yeah.
But we all know that there's more challenges than that to be faced. Plenty of challenges, and anyone watching this video, I'm sure they've been through some tough times running your own business, where you have to make decisions that you don't really want to. I mean, at the moment we're in the midst of the coronavirus, and all my staff keep saying to me at the moment, "You look like you're stressed." It's like, well, it's the decisions that we're trying to make at the moment. It's difficult.
That is difficult. Yeah, I mean, I think one tip I would throw out there is, my dad had 3 employees, and they won't show you the same respect as when you employ someone yourself.
Yeah.
So, they were polite on the front of things, but that level of respect, I don't think you get.
Yeah.
From coming in. I certainly found that. So
that's true,
something to be wary of.
To an extent, it has to be earned, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can sort of understand that. Now I know we bend curtain tracks to bay window shapes. I know about the elasticities of the metal. I know the process. I know it's the Innovation Award. We're the only people that do it a certain way. All of that would have only came from my insight from starting at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I guess that had to be earned and recognised first. But that is no different, as you say, to someone coming in that you employ.
True.
They have to earn the same respect and what have you. It's just they're given a little bit more slack sometimes than the boss's son, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question as well. When you came in, you had this small team around you.
Yeah.
Were they on the shop floor kind of employees, or did you have a management team helping your dad at all, or anything like that?
No, so he was $500,000 turnover. So really, it was my dad. He had one guy called Ken, who was in charge of the fitting teams, and then the fitters. That was it. Oh, and a bookkeeper. And the bookkeeper, I could tell straight away, was what she was charging, what she was doing. That was an early cull. Ken, the problem with the fitting teams was they were managing their own projects. So unfortunately, within the first year, I had to make Ken redundant just because I felt I was duplicating the jobs, and there just wasn't the capacity there for the size salary that my dad had put him on.
Why do you think your dad hadn't spotted this beforehand?
I think he just wanted support. I think it was an additional support for him. He had Ken doing all sorts. He had him doing bookkeeping as well as a bookkeeper. He had him doing fitting, managing, going out doing measures. It was a mess when I joined, and I could see the capacity in it, and it just needed extra sales. It didn't need a fitting manager at that time. I mean, really, I had only got a fitting manager in when we hit 1.5 million, when we were bursting and desperate for fitting manager. Yeah. Till then, I was in charge of sales.
Get the sales in, get the
so
money
within the first year, Ken was redundant, and I took on my first salesman. And he was at immediate maximum capacity. So that was the initial start.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because my dad was very much the same. Had one person looking after the production, if you like, which would be like a fitting manager. Although with curtain making side of things, it was needed more, and with the tracks later on. But looking back at it now, I think he needed more support, and I think that's one of the things about when you have your son or daughter coming into the business, they're actually looking for that support.
Yeah.
Someone to trust. Hence, I was told to sign checks. You know,
Yeah.
people there knew more than me, and
Yeah.
probably the bookkeeper or those people could have probably had. But he trusted me to make the judgment call of actually we won't pay that one now. We'll pay him a bit later, etc. So there's that trust element, and I think one of the things I don't know about you, but from our discussions, and I kind of gave an inkling, but it's that we're giving that responsibility away. So sales team, you have a sales manager.
Yeah.
Finance, you've got a finance manager.
Yeah.
Production, you've got your production manager.
Yeah.
So whereas our fathers they were all of those things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Spending so much time being all those things, they never grow it to what they could potentially grow it to.
Which I think is going to be one of the cool things that we're going to try and talk about in these episodes, is now we've got ourselves in a position where we've got that team underneath us, and realistically we're 70% out of the business.
Yeah.
If not a bit more. Obviously, in the current climate, we've both had to jump in a bit and get involved due to the virus, but on the day-to-day running normality, it's people reporting to us now, and we're just looking forward to how buying other companies and grow what we've got,
totally,
without us in the day-to-day running.
I think back to my father, and I think he had a lot of business skills, probably more so than me, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll never really know, but he was doing so much of the day-to-day work.
Yeah.
Can never use them.
No.
It was impossible for him to grow that business and do the things he needed to, because he was actually the business himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the important takeaways maybe from our first episode is, I don't think you're ever too small to start building a team around you. Nowadays we have also other networks, like we've got business coaches, mentors, we've got MD groups. I'm a member in MD group, which is great at the moment. We're constantly giving each other information, chatting about our problems, and the more minds you have on a subject, and the business is the same. In your business is the same. You don't want to be the best salesman. You want your sales man to be your best salesman or salesperson, sales executive, whatever. And your sales manager to be the best sales manager.
Absolutely.
You don't want to be the best one there.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah. So I mean, shall we just give a few overalls on those initial tips? Just what we.
A recap?
Yeah, just a
recap.
Just a recap on that.
Okay.
So, top tips from this video. Let's go with number one. When you join into the family business, expect a bit of friction. It does take a bit of time. You've got to earn your respect, and when you start employing your people, then you'll really see a different level of respect. And just wait and bite your time and wait for that.
Yeah. Tip 2, get good people around you. Don't be afraid to employ managers and people to take roles on. There is something I call superhero syndrome, that when you start running the business, or when you get into that point where you think you do it better than everyone, so you do everything or try to do everything, you forget how many balls you drop.
Yeah. So
get a good team around you, give them the resources they need and the support, and let them do their stuff.
Definitely. And tip 3, I mean, I think the thing that's really helped us project, which we'll talk a lot more about, is business coaches, business mentors, MD groups, podcasts, continual learning, which we'll go into a lot more detail. But I think I would say they're the 3 keys.
And have fun.
Takeaways. Yeah.
Enjoy
absolutely.
the time. It's not everyone that gets to work with their father or their family, So it's good stuff. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
very much.
watching.